Hi, I'm Paul Stringfellow, and welcome to another episode of Tech Takeaways. As ever, I'm joined by my, I'll pinch his phrase, actually, dynamic co-host, Jason Fitzgerald. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, hi.
So we're on the same sofa this time.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Feels nice.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, feels good.
So it means when we're on the same sofa, it means actually we've got two guests with us on this occasion. So we've got a couple of topics we're going to do over the next couple of episodes. So hopefully you'll like them first time round. So you'll want to come back and watch the next one that we do. But today we're joined by Nathan Miller and Anthony Taylor. No, not the bald Mancunian referee. Just so you don't have to turn off just yet. So guys, welcome to Tech Takeaways.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
And as you can see, neither are the aforementioned Mancunian referee. So we've got a couple of topics we're going to cover over the next couple of shows with you guys. But before we do that, perhaps you should introduce yourselves so the watching viewer has a clue who you are and tell us a little bit about what you do as well.
Brilliant. Do you want to go, Nathan?
Thank you. Nathan Miller, Microsoft Program Manager at Bytes. Obviously working with yourselves and working with others to make sure that we are leveraging all that Microsoft can offer to our customers and our resellers.
Brilliant. And I'm Anthony Taylor, so Microsoft Channel Sales Specialist at Bytes. So I work primarily in the channel and primarily in Microsoft. Been doing it for the best part of a decade now to make sure our partners are growing at Bytes and maximising the opportunity.
10 years doing Microsoft. Feel like, again, we should give you a badge.
I feel like it at this point.
And obviously been doing it since what? You was 10?
Yeah, well, pretty much. Not far off.
That's pretty good. So we've got a couple of topics that we're going to cover off. And the first one we're going to do on this is we're going to talk about something that's, it's new and exciting. New's always exciting. But it's, stretching back into the world of AI and something, and we'll talk about whether this is something that's maybe coming a little too early, because I think it's an interesting question. But we're going to talk about Microsoft's Security Copilot. People are familiar with Copilot as an idea. We've got lots of vendors using the phrase Copilot for stuff. But in this occasion, we're going to be talking about Security Copilot. So do we want to, I don't know who wants to pick this up first. So do you want to, maybe for people first who don't know what Copilot is and, what Microsoft call Copilot, and then maybe we can jump into the idea of what Security Copilot is and how it's different. So there you go. Not much for you to deal with there. See if you can deal with that in the next 10 minutes. That'd be great.
Well, essentially, we're talking about a productized version of OpenAI. We're creating tools with OpenAI to be the virtual assistant at the high level, whatever Copilot is. You're creating an OpenAI assistant to help you with the supposedly mundane tasks.
Okay, yeah. So
do you want to answer? And they go on add to that.
Yeah. Okay.
To
No
build
pressure.
off it, I'm just trying to think because it is such a broad subject.
It's a tough one. This I think
it is.
isn't
Artificial
it?
intelligence is it's massive, but I think its purest form, anything where you're taking large data sets, throwing that into some form of machine learning, and generating outputs from that. So if we take things like Copilot for 365, looking at, there's things like Sound Like Me for that, which you're writing an email, it can look at all the emails in the past, takes those massive data sets, and can actually produce outputs of how you would write an email. So that's one really specific example. So we're taking these large data models and applying that to, as Nathan said, the mundane tasks. I've given this specific example, but we can put that anywhere, doing Excel work, that sort of thing. Obviously, as we move into Copilot for security, similar concept applies. So we're looking at those mundane security tasks as well.
So AI, Microsoft Copilot AI, but focused on security outcomes.
Yep.
That's pretty much what we're talking about here,
Yep.
isn't it? So we're taking in a whole host of telemetry in.
Yep.
We're doing some kind of AI analytics on it.
Yep.
Tell me what's important, and that'll spit out some kind of result.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the amount of, I suppose, inputs and outputs within an IT infrastructure in an organisation and the security, I suppose, vulnerabilities within that, you're going to have huge data sets where you need to monitor it, you need to respond to it quickly, and you're training up quite obviously low-level staff initially to kind of identify that, whether you bring that to the next level or not. But they're the mundane tasks. If you bring Copilot into that, you're using artificial intelligence to just streamline that initial process. Okay, what is the most frequent threat coming into my organisation? And you can actually use natural language as well to identify those sort of answers to those questions. Just ask it, as you would as a person. It's great.
Okay, right. That sounds great. So, as a
You sound sceptical there. What's going on?
No, it does sound really good. That okay. So, as a non-cyber professional, so I don't know anything about cybersecurity. Potentially, I could start to ask that: where are my cyber risks, and it will give me a meaningful answer. Is that?
You could do. I mean, there's other angles to consider because obviously there's a commercial investment in getting it. And you probably do want to have some sort of security practice within your organisation to really get to that point.
Yeah.
But if yes, technically speaking, if somebody came in and deployed it for you and you wanted to start asking those low-level questions, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess you need a level of knowledge to know the right question to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. How do I know to ask that question if I don't know what the detail of the question is? You know, how can I ask about a DDoS attack if I don't know what a DDoS attack is?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
prompting's key.
And it feels like a really important consideration because I think one of the things that is a concern with this kind of technology, and I think Nathan, you kind of made a really good point there about this is not about completely de-skilling the idea of security professionals. You know, this is about aiding. You've used a phrase before, both of you used a phrase before, kind of removing the mundane task, but almost taking that kind of technology so that you're, let's face it, expensive cybersecurity pros sat inside your, expensive and limited resource can spend their time focusing on the important task, the high value task. So I met with somebody a little while back who was, talking about this idea of using managed detection response services. So I know it's a slightly different topic, but one of the things they talked about was, so it allows them at a price to take the mundane tasks away from their security team, and then they can just focus on a small, highly skilled security team who, in the event of something bad going wrong, they can just get focused on that. Yep. So how important is that? And we'll step back from this in a second. But how important is this then that you have that kind of security? You still have those security skills, because this is not about replace all your security folk with a robot. Definitely not. No, I think it's really important with all Copilots across the board to understand they've named it Copilot for a reason. Yeah. Because otherwise, like you say, it'd be Pilot, wouldn't it? If it was completely replacing people, you'd be, it would be named that. But yeah, you still need that human knowledge to augment what Copilot is doing for you. Because, you can ask it a question and it will do its best through Microsoft's graphs and APIs to give you the right answer. But at the end of the day, somebody still needs to take that information, make sure it's still the right information that we're actually looking for, and then apply that to outcomes and responses.
Yeah, I guess on the back of that as well, yes, it can pull from Microsoft Graph, and we're talking security and Microsoft being the biggest attacked platform. It's got a lot of data that way. If it's searching in your organization, the data it's looking at is only as good as what we're putting in. Yep. So the data you're putting in's got to be spot on. And also, not everything on the internet is actually true. So when you're searching and pulling things for the internet, it's not always right. So there's still got to be the human intervention, even if it is a sense check. I think this is 80% right, but that needs tweaking. If you look at it, creating a draft of an email, you still need to tweak it. You still need to change it to your tone of voice. So security is going to be the same. It's not your tone of voice, but it's your company and your process and your procedures. Yeah.
Where other than Graph API can we take telemetry from? Can we take it from wider afield than just Microsoft? Can we maybe take data from the endpoints? Will it take that kind of feed in?
Yeah, it will do. So Microsoft threat detection. So obviously, like your email scanning, endpoint scanning, like Sentinel. Microsoft Defender. Yeah. Okay. That's the word I was looking for. Microsoft Defender. So the Microsoft technologies which collect, analyze, and respond to these threats uses all of them to then feed into the telemetry of Copilot's outputs. Okay.
You've got roughly 40 signed off partners as well. So you've got the Microsoft first party tools, so as you mentioned, Defender, Sentinel, Purview, but you've also got like Darktrace or ServiceNow. You can extend the usability of these third parties and integrate to Microsoft as well.
So let's just take a step back slightly, because I think we're getting into the exciting stuff about what it can do for you. But obviously, they come a bit like the other Microsoft Copilot. So there's a bit to separate out. You've got things like you've got Copilot you can use for free. You go to copilot.com or whatever the URL is, copilot.microsoft.com. You can use Copilot there. You've got Copilot for 365, which kind of think, as you were talking about before, Nathan, it's that Gen AI piece that sits across Microsoft 365. And then we've got Copilot for security, not Security Copilot. So we've got Copilot for security. So that's not as easy. This is not just an investment you make lightly, is it? Because there is a cost associated with this. So what do people need to consider in terms of if they're going to purchase Copilot? What do they need to think about?
Well, they need to think about, okay, how serious am I to have a practice which is focused, dedicated on security? Like, how important is that to my business outcomes? What is the core of my business?
Yeah.
And is the security arm something I really want to invest in? Because it's not, I suppose, the lowest cost to adopt. And it does depend on what you're applying it to in terms of how much it's going to cost, because it is purchased in units, basically. Yeah. It's like SCUs, I think is the term Microsoft use. And they're quite large per SCU. So yeah, just understanding, am I best doing this myself? Where's that line drawn? Or am I best outsourcing this to a partner who could do this across the board to multiple people, basically?
I think you've outlined the direct cost very well. The SCUs are expensive. We've got the indirect cost as well. Although there is no bar to entry, anyone with an Azure subscription can have it. If you don't have Defender, if you don't have Sentinel, if you don't have Purview, all these third parties integrated, it will not be as good. So you have your direct cost, but then you've also got your indirect cost to actually bring it to the level it could be.
As with all Copilots, definitely. There's so much more than just getting the license and applying it. There's so much adoption work you need to do to get it working to a point where you're getting that return on investment, basically.
And so, you mentioned actually something earlier on about the quality of the data going in there. So, the idea that you've got to make sure, as with all AI type technology, that thing that we've always talked about, garbage in, garbage out, is probably even more true now, because it's not only garbage in, garbage out, it's going to be garbage in really fast, garbage out really fast.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're heading with some of this stuff. But, so what, if somebody's listening to this and saying, okay, so, all right, well, this Copilot security thing sounds really interesting. What would some of the things that they should be considering that would make Copilot worthwhile for them? So what does a good use case look like, perhaps?
I think multiple solutions they're using which will provide enough telemetry, because I suppose with security you're not necessarily talking about the quality of the data, because at the end of the day it's going to read security related incidents. It's different with like Copilot for Microsoft 365, because you could have data which is not relevant to the person, and that's a different story.
I suppose maybe almost enough data to make it worthwhile.
Enough data to make it worthwhile, I think, is the more important point. I don't know if you'd agree, but essentially, making sure I think if you're just a person using, an endpoint security solution or something like that, you haven't got the need for it.
From it.
You're not going to have the people sat there which are doing that kind of mundane work in a human form. So I think enough data is definitely the more important point.
I think that use case of a larger organisation that has made some investments in existing so Darktrace, for example. So they've got that existing investment in the technology there. They don't want to take it out. You don't want to really move from those platforms. You want to enrich the usability of those platforms. And so if you're in an organisation that's got Darktrace and you've got some AV, CrowdStrike and whatever, and that's all feeding into Security Copilot, you may have a cybersecurity person there, but it may only be one.
Yep.
And you may have 500, maybe 1,000 users for that one individual. And what you kind of started with was it gets rid of the mundane. Okay, well, if we're getting rid of that mundane and that person is able to focus on more accurate information and act on that more accurate information, they're providing more value to their role, isn't it? Because all of that stuff that would otherwise consume time, looking at multiple dashboards, because none of the dashboards talk to each other, and working out what's actually happening. Copilot is spelling it out. Look, this is the area that you need to go and focus on. Mm-hmm. If I was you, I would prioritize that task over all of the others.
That's it. If you're thinking the amount of time where they're investigating things where there might not necessarily be an issue.
Yeah.
And Copilot can obviously jump through that and just give them the high level, okay, these are the areas you need to focus on, as you say. So that's massive time back as well.
Yeah.
It's really important.
Yeah, because I was going to ask actually that I suppose one of the things that you get, and the security, I think the security space is perhaps particularly, I don't know if guilty is quite the right phrase, but I'm going to go with it, is guilty of this in that there's always another security tool, and if I'm listening to this, I'm going, so Jason mentioned there, Darktrace. So one of Darktrace's big sells is actually their use of AI. They're using intelligence in Darktrace to do a lot of the things that we've talked about. So, what would you say to somebody? I suppose this goes back to my thing before, actually, about use cases. What would you say to somebody who's listening to this and going, well, I've already got a plethora of security tools. I don't really want to spend, potentially quite a lot of money on something else. What would you say to them? What would you look at in them to say, actually, I can show you where this is going to deliver some value?
I would focus more on the value in having your multiple security solutions talking to each other.
Yeah.
And maybe Copilot is the catalyst in delivering that. I'm trying to think of an exact example, but I may fall short of that. But at the end of the day, if you've got isolated security solutions looking at individual elements of your IT infrastructure, you are not going to be as strong in defense as having them all chatting to each other. It's like having separate individual walls around your house. One big wall is going to be 10 times better than, separating that out individually.
And I suppose it's almost the ability for you to ask questions of that entire stack,
exactly,
as opposed to ask questions individually of each bit.
Because one solution won't have eyes over another solution or know how, that security incident has come in, but maybe it's been related to another solution that's had an impact there.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've spoken about this, the importance of visibility between tools on a previous podcast, because an attack that starts on the endpoints doesn't stay on the endpoint for long. It may go from the endpoint into M365, may at some point be going through your corporate firewall back into your network. So you've got multiple points there, the endpoint, the cloud environments, the firewall, and then the on-prem stuff. If they're not talking to each other, how do you build up the attack chain? Easily. You can't. You're looking at each one in isolation. Oh, well, this attack happened here. And if you're missing those nuggets, you're missing what happened.
Yep.
You're missing the picture. Whereas if they're all talking to each other, you see it step by step. That happened, then that happened, then that happened. Okay, right. I get what's going on here now.
So guys, as we come to kind of wrapping up this episode, so for somebody watching, we call this tech takeaways for a reason. So there should be a takeaway. So I'm preparing you for the question that's coming. But for somebody watching this, what would be that kind of takeaway for them? So, okay, what should they be thinking about? What should they consider? They're looking at, they've heard about these kind of Microsoft Copilots. They've heard about security, which is kind of the latest of the Copilots to be available from Microsoft. What would be the thing they should be considering as to whether they should be jumping into the Copilot pond?
If I can, I'm going to be a bit awkward, I think.
Go for it.
I don't think the question is, should you be, maybe not Copilot, but at least using artificial intelligence to bolster your defenses, because at the end of the day, the malicious actors out there are using it.
Yeah.
You need to be on the defense with that. So you should be using it. The question is, who should be doing it for you? Do you want to do that yourself, or do you want to work with a partner who can do it for you? And that's what we need to consider.
There needs to be the commitment. Anyone can go out and buy it, and yes, it's expensive, but it's very easy to buy. If there's not the commitment to invest time into learning how to get it off the board, setting the playbooks up and actually using it, you won't see a return on investment, and it's just another expensive solution.
Good takeaway.
Yeah. What about you, Jace? You got a takeaway?
AI, everything.
Great stuff.
Embrace AI as a tool and work out how you're going to get the most value from it.
I was thinking AI for everything, hashtagging that for this episode.
Yeah.
So, look, Jace, Nathan, not the Mancunian referee. Guys, thanks. That's been really insightful. I know it's a massive topic, and it's difficult to do it justice in kind of such a short time period, but I think we've given people a good flavour of where Copilot for Security sits and the kind of thing that it might be able to do. So, guys, thanks for that. We'll be having you back on for another episode shortly. So, hey, if you enjoyed this episode, then do pop the thumbs up on the YouTubes, and to make sure you catch the future episodes of the show, then do subscribe. You can subscribe here on YouTube, and you can subscribe at all good homes of podcasts. Doing wherever Jason's pointing, do that. So, hey, until next time though, thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for your time, appreciate it, and we'll see you all again soon.